Welcome to the Viewless Wings Poetry Podcast, where we celebrate the craft of poetry. Each week, we feature interviews with incredible poets and artists, including Olivia Gatwood and A.E. Stallings, and original poetry read by the authors. I'm your host, James Morehead, Poet Laureate of Dublin, California, and author of Canvas and Portraits of Red and Gray. In this special episode of the Viewless Wings podcast, I'll be speaking with Italian animator Gaia Alari. Gaia and I collaborated to bring the poem Tethered from my book Canvas to life through the meticulous magic of hand-drawn traditional animation. You can find the animation on viewlesswings.com. To provide context for the interview with Gaia, I'll first read the poem that inspired Gaia's animation. Tethered by James Morehead. I've long ago learned to ignore the rhythmic tug of the chain that tethers me to the ocean floor. A chill curls around my painted stripes as fog rolls toward a distant shore and wave-powered bells warn those sailing near. I hear passing ships cutting towards the Golden Gate and imagine their carefully stacked containers swaying in the swells. Later, fog fades, and California's sun steams dew from my metallic frame, unveiling the shore's outline once more. A seagull pauses, perched and chattering, singing me stories until trade winds lift her to dance above whitecaps. Soon, the season of storms returns, bringing fierce waves and wind to power the peals of my warning bells. Deep in winter, mist freezes to my metallic skin, crafting turquoise crystals that flicker in the moonlight. But in time, calm and warmth return, lit by the moon's waning crescent, mirrored on still water's glass. Do I measure time in seasons, or in dawns and dusks, or count the cycles of frost freezing then dripping melted down my spine? Or do I set aside time and count the swells, or passing ships, or pods of dolphins, shivers of sharks, colonies of gulls? I dream of one day being released from my tether, my work complete, transformed into turquoise sea glass, smoothed by tides and resting on a shoreline beach, waiting to catch the eye of a strolling passerby. How did you approach animating my poem Tethered?
I really found it very easy in the first place to understand what you wanted. So I have to thank you because you briefed me amazingly. And when you work with somebody else, sometimes it can happen that, they don't brief you correctly. You have to, understand exactly what they are looking for. But for you, it was very clear. And the poem really set by itself the mood for me in a very immediate way, and that's probably the quality of the poem. It made me immediately understood that I had to go towards something that was typically American. That actually could be referred to the aesthetic that is used in the cinema of the United States more than for example, European cinema. I love so many indie films from the United States made by wonderful directors. So I went to follow that kind of feeling that somehow reminded me of all the American writers that I read. So I am a lover of contemporary American novels, like, from Don DeLillo, Raymond Carver. So I kind of found the same, background that I used to feel when I was reading these writers. So I knew that the direction I wanted to take was that. Then you explained to me that you Tethered is basically the story of a boy a poet imagining himself as a boy. So I wanted to emphasize the concept of, being in a way passive, like subject to what's happening in the world, and not finding, and at the same time being tied and to a place in which you can't you can't break free from that situation specifically. It can be actually compared to the situation of trees. For example, trees are rooted, they have to stay in place, and they're just subject to whatever environmental events happen around them, and they can't do anything to change the situation. And that's quite like, I don't know, the situation that we had during this pandemic also. So the parallelism came very, very, very naturally for me, and I put the feeling that I had during the pandemic of being tethered still in one place, watching the event and everything passing me by, to what you put in the poem, and blended it with a kind of aesthetic that could hint to the old American writers and the American films of the 70s. I don't know, I think of John Cassavetes, for example, as a director, and put that inside the whole bubble of the process. And and also, of course, making it a little bit surreal by adding some transitional sequence that are enticing and that are dynamic, so that they could follow the pace, of course, of the poem. And I personally love the grainy effect of traditional hand-drawn animation, and I loved the fact that you proposed to make it in 9:16 as a aspect ratio, because it creates a very nice contrast. So I went a little with a heavier hand on the analogic part, because I wanted to create this contrast between film, the film sensation, so very hand-drawn, very, human, and the aspect ratio that is typical of like the super young generation and the technology and the social media. So that was really that was something that really gave me inputs and inspired me. So yeah, the whole poem in general was inspiring. So it was easy. It was an easy task.
How did you discover a passion for animation?
So at first I didn't at all plan to become an artist or an animation artist. I am completely self-taught. And at the beginning I had a training, and I had an academic career in medicine. I studied medicine at university, and as a side passion I always had that of art, contemporary art. I love to study art books or go to museums, and I always had a knack for drawing. And as a child, I remember as a teenager I used to draw the portraits of my professors or of my classmates or anything, basically. And while I was in my university years, I kind of felt a little bit caged into all the medical subjects and the things to do and the internship, and everything was very, very, very focused on one thing only. And I kind of missed to be able to explore and create the creative part. So I kind of started developing it almost unconsciously at first, and not believing in that too much, not to be disappointed afterwards. And so I started there, and slowly but steadily I became always much more confident in what I could do, and also thanks to the feedback that I was receiving, and that was getting more and more widespread in a way. So at first I started as a basic illustrator. Then I decided that I could step up and I don't know, try to make something more artistic. Then I remember that I went to a contemporary art museum here in Italy, and I saw the exhibition by Swedish artist called Natalie Djurberg, who uses clay animation as a tool for making contemporary art. And I thought, okay, she does it, why can't I? So I tried literally to use stop motion and clay animation in the specific to tell some stories. At the same time, like by chance, I was contacted by a band that asked me to maybe make a music video in clay animation for them. And I started, but not like that, not long ago. My first clay animation came out in 2018, so not that long ago. And I started making music videos or short films in that technique. And since I've always drawn, it seemed just natural to make a further step and try and tackle 2D and hand-drawn animation. I've always loved to give to the still images that I kept producing narrative quality that I couldn't find in one single drawing. So when I was working as a visual artist, I basically made series. So the natural next step was making a series of animated drawings and tell stories through them. So I had these influences from this artist, Natalie Djurberg, and also another artist who works in 2D in charcoal, that is William Kentridge, that are really big artists. So they're like top influences that showed me that from a place of not being a professional, somebody who studied animation, you can actually come up with something your own from a completely different path, if you're honest and if you work hard and if you have something to say. So there is the beginning of me being an animator, director of animated short films and music videos, let's say. So that's the job I'm doing now.
Hand-drawn animation is so beautiful and meticulous. Describe the work you do behind the scenes to create 90 seconds of animation.
90 seconds is quite an endeavoring job. I mean, I'm a one-woman crew. So I work alone, even though I am about to work with a team of people now, because I'm moving from, for example, music videos or small clips to short films and cinema, which is something that I've always wanted to. But I'm used to work alone, so it entails a lot of time spent in researching, for example, for eventual reference images, or also watching movies. I watch a lot of movies that give me the inspiration for creating the atmospheres that could go well with one piece or another. For example, when I work with music, I do that a lot. I start to get to know the musician and the kind of aesthetic they have in mind and they want to be represented. I usually go and find films that could give me inputs that I can elaborate and then use when I direct and animate the clips or the music videos, or in your case, the clips for your poem. And so definitely there is the research part that takes the beginning of the process. And when my ideas are clear, I start drawing, and then the process is quite boring, basically, because it's just drawing and drawing and drawing and drawing meticulously every day. I definitely have to thank medical school for my ability to focus on something like laser beam focus, so I can actually wake up at 8 and draw until 8 p.m. So 8 a.m. in the morning till 8 p.m. just drawing, and so that's why I love podcasts and TV series and films, because I need something to listen to. And I try for this kind of short works not to be too strict with a storyboarding process, because I need my mind to be in close contact with my hand. So while I'm drawing, I need to think of the scene I'm gonna draw next. That comes up quite naturally, and it's very freeing and very nice to have the consciousness that did I work on that scene the day before, for example, I would have drawn something different. So this is, I want to maintain this little, freedom and ability to make mistakes and then correct those mistakes and come up with something different during the whole process. It makes it very, very interesting, and definitely it prevents me from getting bored, because boredom is one of my biggest fear. Definitely, I fear what I might do if I get bored. My process is it can look quite boring effectively, because it's just drawing, but in the meantime my mind works. So the mechanical works help my mind to move on and think of the subsequent scene, and think of other projects also that I may be able to do. And it's always a challenge. Sometimes I think I'll never be able to draw that scene, too complicated, and then that's when I say no, I have to draw that, because that's the challenge that keeps me going. And definitely then there is the narrative part that I'm currently developing more and more. I'd like to explore more narrative, a classic narrative line. I'm still very fragmented and a little bit artsy, so I'd like to develop something that still has the artsy quality, but also has a beginning and an end. I am a little bit loopy at the moment, and still very attached to the video art world. So I'd like to for the next steps, by working with cinema, I'd like to break through a little bit and see what I can do when I am given a task of directing something that has a beginning and a definite end, and something happens in between. So yeah.
Finally, any advice for people listening who are interested in getting into animation?
Okay, so I'm not like the best person to ask this question to, because as I told you, I'm completely untraditional, I'm completely, but I can definitely give an advice. If you have something that you feel like you should try and you should tackle, don't be afraid. Just try and do that, and don't get upset if you don't succeed in your first attempt. This requires being stubborn and hardworking, and definitely study. Keep your mind open every time, and try and gather influence from the most diverse part of the creative world that you can, because you have to develop your own style to be recognizable and different from the others. There are many animators, so if you want to be, it depends also on what you want to do. If you want to be an animator who gets hired by, for example, an animation studio, then my advice would be that of going to an animation school and prepare yourself properly. But if you want to freelance and somehow give, not just be an animator, but also be a director and artist and visual artist, animator artist, it's more like a hybrid. So as a hybrid itself, you should be a hybrid too. So go study, do things, take influence from everything, take the inspiration from anything. I'm always keeping my mind open with inputs, filled with inputs. I wanted to take Polaroids, I bought a Polaroid camera, for example. This helped me a lot to develop something within my drawing. And don't try and absorb things too rationally. They're gonna come to you. You're gonna digest them. I always say that this kind of learning looks more like an unlearning process, because it's not really rational. It's not. It has nothing to do with what I studied when I was in medical school. So books, and then from the book to the head, and then from the head to the professor, in my case, when I had the tests, or to the aisle when I had the internship. In this case, it's just you don't have to focus or try and concentrate too much on what you are supposed to be learning. Just let it sink. Your brain is going to do the work for you and digest, all the information, synthesize them, and then you're going to re-elaborate them in your work, because every one of us is a different human being. So the same influence that I can have if me and you goes to the same museum can affect me in one way and affect you in the opposite way. So basically, that's my advice. Be curious. That's what I want to say. Yeah.
The Viewless Wings Poetry Podcast is written and produced by James Morehead. You can follow me on Twitter at Dublin Ranch, subscribe to the Viewless Wings Poetry Podcast, and follow us on viewlesswings.com or on Instagram at Viewless Wings.